Welcome to Graceful Healing, a podcast to get straight talk about healing and living again. My name is Maureen Lake. I'm a holistic health coach, speaker, author, and thyroid disease fighter. Each week, I'll be bringing you graceful conversations to inspire you to seek new ways to hit the reset button to catapult your health and vitality to new levels. Listen in and open your heart to all the new possibilities. Are you ready? Let's do this. Good morning. Today, when Michele and I decided to chat and hit record, we really didn't know what we were going to talk about until Michele mentioned, hey, why don't I ask you the questions you ask other people? So that's what we did. I share a little more about my story, beginning with the year right after the Aurora movie theater shooting, which living through Columbine and then this can really take a toll on your psyche, which it did for our community and myself. But it was also the beginning of my healing journey. And by the way, please join us in our private Facebook group where we can continue our conversations. You can find us at the Graceful Healing Podcast VIP room on Facebook. I hope you enjoy this latest episode of Friday Feelings. Have a great weekend, y'all.
Good morning, Maureen. How are you today?
Hi, Michele. So good to talk to you.
Yeah, it's great. I love our phone calls.
Me too.
And these chats.
I love them too.
It's been great. So we were talking a couple of days ago about your podcast because I've really enjoyed the feedback from all the people that listened to our chat on Friday. And so I think it would be really fun if we could turn the tables and I could ask you the same questions that you asked me last week. Okay. How do you feel about that?
I'm game if you're game.
Oh, yeah, it'll be great. And I'm sure that your listeners would love to hear your story. So why don't you tell us your story and how you landed where you are today?
Okay. Well, I think I would have to go back a few years, my last year of teaching. And I spent my last year at Aurora Public Schools. I kind of left my cushy job in the suburbs of Denver where everything was just easy and just kind of flowing along without even a second thought, and took a position in Aurora, which is mainly low income and a lot of transient population. But it was also right after the Aurora movie theater shooting was my first year there. And so it just so happened that it was actually the worst year of my professional life ever.
Oh.
And it was just so incredibly difficult, stressful, hard. I mean, the kids were a mess, the parents were a mess, the community, it was really, really I can't even talk about it without getting really emotional about it. But that year really, I made the decision to walk away from teaching, and I've never gone back. But I needed something to do, right? And that's when I got involved in the pet industry, and I still have that company, the online company called Trendy Pet, as kind of like a side hustle with my daughter. But we wanted to get involved in making dog biscuits. I mean, I'm trying to connect the dots here because my beautiful Kira, my Labradoodle, was obese. And so I really wanted to make a line of biscuits for her, but I didn't necessarily know enough. Anyways, it kind of opened the door to learning more about nutrition. So that's how I ended up going to the Institute of Integrated Nutrition and learning all about bio-individual aspects of people. Oh gosh, I learned from some of the most amazing wellness professionals in the world, like including Dr. Hyman, Deepak Chopra, I mean, you name it. And I just really learned about self-care, nutrition, finances. I mean, it's like this whole gamut of just who you are as a person is what they teach you, but it's also really like introductory type of information. And so I knew from after finishing that program that I loved learning about it. We launched our little doggy bakery, and that was pretty successful, but we've sold it since then. But like the whole pieces just kind of fell together. I left that job. I walked into this one and I just loved it. But right around that same time, my daughter was diagnosed with hypothyroidism. And I was like, now that's really weird. Why in the world does she have that? And so I picked up a book by Dr. Aviva Romm, her thyroid book, and I was reading that to learn more about how I can help my daughter. And lo and behold, Dr. Aviva Romm opened up her program, which is called Functional and Integrated Medicine for Women. So I went ahead and I just applied. Thought, what the heck? It was all, it's geared towards medical doctors and nurse practitioners, but I just went ahead and applied. And she actually accepted 2 health coaches into her program, and I was one of them.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. So I spent the year just studying under her. And that's when I had my big epiphany about so many things. And things about myself. I didn't really understand that I had a lot of hormonal problems. I just never put 2 and 2 together. I just kind of accepted the fact that, well, everybody has miscarriages, right? Or endometriosis. Oh my gosh, it's no big deal. Or getting a hysterectomy at 40 years old. I mean, all these different things that at the time I just thought it was life.
Yeah.
I never really connected those dots. So going through her program was incredibly powerful. And again, right around that time that my husband was diagnosed with type 2 diabetes. And so he was starting to really pay attention to what he was eating, and the research that I had been learning through Aviva Romm's program. I knew plant-based eating was powerful and a really amazing way to lower your blood sugar levels and get Steve back on track. And so I went to Cornell and took their certificate program just so I could have that under my belt as well. And Steve started feeling so much better, and his blood tests were coming back. His A1C was lowering. But as he was getting better, I was getting sicker. I mean, I was
oh gosh,
hit this huge wall. And oh gosh, you know the story. You get so frustrated with your internists because all they do is dismiss you and tell you that everything is fine. And because I went to Aviva's program, I really sought out an integrated doctor, went to her. Everything wasn't fine.
Oh, yeah.
And that wall that I kept on hitting was actually, I had hypothyroidism too and didn't know it. Probably had it going back in my history of my blood work for at least 5 to 7 years prior.
Oh, man.
And I had extremely low iron. My ferritin levels were depleted. My hair was falling out. I felt like I was walking through a maze all the time of a maze that I couldn't find my way out of. And it was thick and syrupy. That's just kind of, and it's either that or I feel this black veil come down. So anyways, that's just how the fatigue hits me. So I just went along the pathway of cleaning, detoxifying, getting my gut healthy, because in reality, everything else is just a Band-Aid if you don't address your gut issues. And that's really what led me to where I am today as far as, and to get back to the plant-based eating thing, the thing that was so interesting was, as it was helping Steve, I had some more blood work done as part of my protocol with my functional doctor. And my system really needs meat protein. And
interesting.
Yeah, I had no idea. I was getting plenty of protein, but I wasn't getting the right kind of protein for my body. And so once I went back to eating some, lean, clean meats and made sure they were, for me, I wanted to make sure they were range-free chicken and all that kind of stuff, and as organic as you can get, to make sure that they were clean. It made a huge difference in my activity level and my fatigue level. So for me personally, I never would have known that if this doctor hadn't dug in deeper to figure out some of the root cause of what was going on with me. And sure enough, the plant-based eating wasn't good for me, but it's an easy fix because Steve can still eat plant-based, and I can just throw some, lean meat protein on top of whatever it is that we're eating. So,
that's great. So is Steve still eating a plant-based diet?
Well, now he does for the most part, but he will eat lean meats also.
Okay.
But that's made a tremendous difference in his type 2. It really has.
Oh, that's that. And, it's such an amazing, easy fix if you think about it compared to all the medications and things that, people typically are using.
Right.
So this is just fascinating to me how, you end up on one path and then you find yourself in a totally different place.
Exactly.
Yes. But how did you go about finding your functional medicine doctor?
Michele, that was not easy. I mean, you would think living in Denver, of all places, with Boulder right there and all the different medical facilities that we have, and there's really only a handful of functional medicine doctors that practice both. And that's what I wanted. I wanted someone that still practiced Western medicine, but was trained in the integrative and functional. And her practice is amazing because she also has like an acupuncturist. She has a dry sauna there. She has yoga. It's like very holistic and a great place like to go, right? It's like, and just feel healthy and I don't know, almost like encapsulated in a cocoon type setting that makes you just feel good that you're doing something positive. But I actually had to go and do some research on the integrative, I think it's called the integrativefunctionalmedicine.com or whatever website that comes up with the list of practitioners in your area.
Oh, okay.
And that's how I found her. And I mean, unfortunately, it's not covered by insurance. And so you kind of join a membership and go that route. But for me, personally, it's changed my life. It really has.
Oh. Well, I can relate to that. It's too bad our insurance companies don't like preventative medicine opposed to, fixing it after you're already broken.
Right, exactly. And the whole Band-Aid approach doesn't work. I mean, you really have to get down to the root cause, and oftentimes it's more than one thing. And for me, sure, I was diagnosed hypo, but then I had an event occur that was extremely stressful. And then lo and behold, I went through like a whole nother series of things were out of whack, what's going on. And then she checked my antibodies and sure enough, now I have both hypo and Hashimoto's. So,
oh gosh.
And I know that the stressful situation I went through was the tipping point for bringing on the Hashis. So,
and so how are you treating that today?
Well, gosh, that's such a good question because it's interesting, especially I journal every morning. And one of the things that I make sure that I journal about is how things were the day before, because fatigue for me is like my big, huge stumbling block. And I can always pinpoint it to either something I ate, something I didn't eat, not enough water. It's usually like something that I have control over. And that's what's so frustrating because I see a pattern, but then I continue to repeat the pattern if I'm not aware of it. So that's why it's important for me to kind of keep a journal. But as far as the tipping point for me is also a lot of stress. So I have to practice meditation every day. It's such a huge piece of my life. And without that, I'm not really sure how I would manage some things. So it's all a matter of changing your lifestyle, changing your mindset, and then changing, obviously for me, my nutrition, because my gut is really controlling everything with my autoimmune. Yeah.
Well, gosh, this is just amazing to hear because if you weren't doing some of these things, especially managing your stress, it would just spiral.
Oh,
and there'd just be more and more, problems. But so, gosh, it's amazing, really.
And like right now, I'm going through a weird thing where I'm not sleeping well at all. And I know the importance of sleep. I know what it can do to your system, but still, it's just a cycle I'm going through, and I know I'll work myself out of it. But it's frustrating when you know that you've come across something that you know better about, and you're trying hard to work through it. And that's when I think it's like so important to have a support system in place, or even friends or colleagues that you can talk to about some of the issues that you face, because trying to do everything alone makes it even that much harder.
Oh, yeah, I think I totally agree. And, who better than other women
Mm-hmm.
that might be going through at the same time, or that you can guide because you've been through it, or they can guide you because they're going through it. I think that's the beauty of sisterhood.
Exactly. And you know how many people are awake at 3:00 in the morning on Facebook?
Oh, it's sad but true. We could all have a little meetup at that time in the night. Yeah. Well, it's interesting that you say journaling, and seeing those patterns, because that's one of the things I haven't been doing really well recently. And it's huge, to be able to say, oh, I didn't sleep well last night. And, you look at yesterday and go, well, look at all the things that contributed to that. Maybe, that's not a sure thing, but that's fascinating. So I am, hearing your story is so amazing, because, you leave a job that you're unhappy with, and then look at all the great things that have come as a result of that.
Yeah. And the thing is, I love teaching. I taught special education for like 15 years. Absolutely. And I still love it. And I haven't even officially retired, because I keep thinking in the back of my mind, I want to leave that door open. But yeah, that 1 year was really a deal breaker for me in so many ways. And I'm really grateful that other doors opened because of it. I was able to go into business with my daughter, and now just have this side hustle that still is pretty fun. And what I've learned since then, as far as nutrition and health, has helped. I can't tell you how it's helped my entire family, let alone the people that I work with. So it's huge. And I hate it when some of the women that I work with, and they feel so stuck. It's like, well, I can't do anything now. I'm like 55 years old. And I'm like, it's 55 years young, number one.
Yeah. Well, I think it's just a great testament to, there's something on the other side of whatever, might be bringing you unhappiness or unsettled feelings, that sometimes that's the sort of impetus for you to take that next step. Because you wouldn't have done that if everything had been perfect, in your work environment.
Oh, no. Not at all.
Yeah.
I'd still probably just be teaching.
Yeah. And not that that's a bad thing, but look at, all the things that have opened up as a result. It's pretty cool. Now, you did not mention that in this period of time, you've also written 2 books. Oh. Pretty incredible.
Well, 1.5.
1.5. Okay.
The other one is still... It's written, but it hasn't been published yet. But thank you for mentioning that.
Yeah. Well, I just remember reading your first book and just being so in awe, one, that you wrote it and published it so quickly, but also that you had placed yourself in this position of really opening up your heart and, being sort of vulnerable at the time, that you were sharing, very personal things about you and your family. And it was amazing. So I highly recommend it.
Oh, thank you. I wrote it because I wanted to write a book for all the moms that I worked with that are raising, spirited child or challenging child, being a special ed teacher. And it's just really a book about self-care. But as I was writing the book, I realized it wasn't necessarily only a love story to them. It was actually turned out to be like a love story to myself. And it was a healing. It helped me heal as well, and to recognize areas of my life that needed improvement. It took me on a journey of self-discovery. So if nothing more came from that book, that did, and which was huge for me.
Oh, yeah. Well, it was great. I can remember I was traveling at the time and I read it on my phone, because I thought, I'll just, sort of check it out. And then I was so captivated. I read the whole thing on my phone. I don't think I'd ever done that before. It was great. And, also we talked last time about, how we've known each other so long, but yet there were so many things we didn't know. And this was huge, that you were going through all this and we never had really had a chance to talk about all that you were going through at that time.
I kept it really quiet. Even my 2 sisters came to me and said, we had no idea, Maureen. And I was like, I know. I wanted to portray like this perfect life, I guess. I mean, I don't know who I was portraying it to, but I think that's what we do oftentimes is have this facade, and it's really not always that way.
Yeah. And I think, that's a great lesson again, and going back to, if you can find a group of people that those sisters primarily that you can share because you're going through things at the same time, or somebody who's been through that, kind of journey ahead of you. But you've done such a great job in bringing women together, and you're just my hero. Oh. Wow.
That's funny.
So one of the things I know that you like to ask people on your podcast is, if you could narrow it down then to maybe 2 or 3 things you've learned along the way.
Gosh, one of my biggest takeaways from just like stepping away from education and going down this journey is the importance of, and this sounds so stupid, I realize that. I mean, it's just like, it's so obvious, but just the importance of the food that we eat and the impact it has on your body, or the toxins we take in and we don't even really realize it. And just being aware of all those things that we do have control over, because, if we don't remove the triggers, figure out your triggers, remove them and replace them with something else, you're going to be in a cycle of constantly letting your autoimmune or your chronic illness run you instead of you running it.
Oh boy, that's huge.
Yeah. I mean, that's probably my biggest takeaway through all this, and the importance of, and again, this sounds so silly, but just taking care of yourself first. Because I think as women and moms, we tend to take care of everybody else, and we're the last person on the totem pole. And that's got to stop. It just has to stop.
Yeah, I wonder how we got to that point in our culture.
I know. I think back like with my mom, here she was, one of the few women that enlisted in the Navy during World War II and was repairing airplanes. And she was so confident in playing softball and doing all these amazing things. And then the war ended and she went right back to being a housewife, never drove a car, never did it, and it just, the stereotypical kind of thing occurred to her where for 2 years in her life, it was beautiful. And then boom, everything. So I think a lot of it just has to do with, I know I was brought up in a family that's what my mom did. She took care of everybody else. And so that's kind of what I did. And you learn from your mom. That's what I, basically.
Yeah. Well, and I think one of the things that you mentioned, we sort of touched upon last week when we did the podcast together was, feeling comfortable around women or your friends to sort of admit that things aren't perfect. And, there's a period of when your children are young, maybe that, you have to put that on, that sort of everything is great, life is wonderful, and it often isn't. So that, I think you've really identified that, that self-care first. And it seems selfish, but it really is better for everybody.
It definitely is. Absolutely.
Yeah, because it's kind of like, the air mask coming down from the airplane, and you have to breathe first before you can help your children. So
that's exactly what it is.
We should remember that in all phases of our life.
I know. And even though your kids are grown and raised, I mean, you still need to take care of yourself first. You really do.
Oh, yeah. I think that's the best part about being this age again, is that there's a little more capacity for that, but you still really have to make the effort.
Yeah. And then you're becoming this amazing role model that maybe your children hadn't seen before.
Oh, gosh. Great point.
Yeah. So they can always learn from us.
That's right. That's right. We have so much knowledge and wisdom. So you kind of touched on that, the next question, in just talking about the self-care. But if you could go back and tell your younger self one piece of advice, what would that be?
This is really hard because I actually go back to my first year of college at Stevens with you. And it was kind of like the beginning of not having a voice.
Ah.
And having to leave that school and transfer when I really didn't want to, but I didn't have a voice to share my needs or even express how I felt. So my younger self was always doing everything to please everybody else. And so if I could go back in time, that's what I would tell her. Start speaking up for yourself, have your own identity, your own feelings. And that's the one thing, Michele, I was always in awe of you about, because your situation in a lot of ways was similar at Stevens, but you spoke up and you stood up, and I didn't have that capacity. So I would tell my younger self, grow a pair, because your life would be so different now if you had.
Yeah, it's interesting, though. I think we go through things at different points in our life and find strength that we don't really know we have. Mm-hmm. And, you've certainly had plenty of those moments. And so don't discredit yourself for not standing up.
Well, I've learned along the way, believe me. But back then when I was younger, there's no way. There is no way I could.
It is kind of interesting, though. Again, I think we go back to, if you look at your moms, our moms, women of that generation, they often didn't have a voice. And so we kind of learned that, I guess, but we're breaking that cycle now.
We are, aren't we?
And I think our daughters have learned to have a voice, and hope
my daughter does, believe me.
Yeah, mine too. And I'm proud of her for that.
I am too. I'm so proud of her.
Great. Well, this has been so much fun to sort of switch it around and have you answer all these questions that you've been asking all these people on your podcast.
Well, you know what? It's a lot funner being the host than it is the guest.
Yeah, because, here we go back to that vulnerability.
Exactly.
Right?
Exactly.
But it's really fun. And, I think what I have loved so much about our recent renewal in having these really deeper conversations is how much we've grown separately, but together. Mm-hmm. We didn't see each other very often, and we didn't talk as often as I wish we had in probably 20 years. And, life was in the way there, I guess, with where we were in our family situations. But it's just been so fun to go back and do this.
I agree. It's been a lot of fun. And I can't wait for what we have down the road, too.
I know. So should we maybe start to reveal a little bit of what we're thinking?
Sure. Go ahead.
Oh, gosh. Well, it's very infant stages, but Maureen and I have just had so much fun doing this. We want to start to share this with other people, and these opportunities to have these deeper conversations and have fun while we're doing it. So
lots of fun.
We're looking at doing a retreat here in Tucson. There's so many fun things to do here in Tucson, as long as it's not 115 degrees.
Which is why we're doing it in the fall.
That's right. Which fall is really one of the best times of year here in Tucson, when it's still warm during the day, but the evenings and mornings are beautiful. And so stay tuned, I guess, is the big thing. There's
some kind of spiritual, magical thing about Tucson. There really is. It's gorgeous.
Well, thank you. We always laugh and say it's kind of a love it or hate it environment. And those of us who have been here a long time are really glad that some people it doesn't resonate with and they leave. Because it's kept it, even though it is a city and growing, it's a small town atmosphere. And there's so many great things that we'll be exploring as we move forward in our planning.
I know. I can't wait.
Yeah, me too. So I hope that your audience will stay tuned and actually maybe give us some feedback, of things that they would like to see.
That would be awesome.
Yeah. Can you ask those questions in your upcoming podcasts?
I'll write that down.
Okay. Well, I'll be listening because I've just enjoyed them so much. And so thank you for letting me interview you today.
Oh, you're welcome, Michele.
It's been fun.
It has been fun. A lot of fun.
All right. Well, you have a great day.
You too. Talk to you later.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye. Hey, thank you for joining us today. I hope you enjoyed this episode as much as I did. If you can, take a moment and give us a review. And please join the VIP room in Facebook for more discussion and insights. You can find us at Graceful Healing Podcast VIP room. See you there and see you next time.